Hello everyone, this is Rig and welcome to an episode on the early Vedic age. Now this will be a part 1 of this video series, and in this video we have made the content according to the syllabus of CISCE or ICSE board, and it belongs to the students of class 6. However, if you are interested to know about the early Vedic age, or if you are from any other board, you can obviously go through this video as usual. And also carry a notebook with you when you are seeing this video so that you can note down the important points. And if you have any doubts regarding what I will explain, then you can post it in comments. I will try to answer it to the best of my capability. And also one more thing, in the second part of this video there will be important question and answers which will be important to you for your exams. So without doing any delay, let's begin. Origin of the Aryans. Now, who were the Aryans? Many people pronounce this word Aryans as Aryans. Both are correct. So, who were the Aryans and where did they originate from? Various theories suggest different origins for the Aryans, including Central Asia theory supported by Max Muller. So Max Muller was an European historian who suggested a theory regarding the origin of the Aryans, and he said that Aryans originated in the Central Asia near a water body called the Caspian Sea, and from there they migrated to India by crossing the Hindu Kush mountains. So, this is one theory regarding the origin of the Aryans. Indigenous origin theory. Indigenous origin theory says that Aryans did not come from anywhere else, they were typically from this place only, and they are the people of this place, they originated from here itself. Now indigenous origin theory in today's world is considered to be the truth, because according to scientific evidence like the DNA analysis and genetic analysis, we have come to the conclusion that indigenous origin theory is the actual reason of the Aryans being in this place called Bharat. The Central Asia theory, widely accepted, posits that Aryans migrated to India around 1500 BC. So it is assumed that the Aryans to uh, originated in Central Asia and they migrated to India in around the date of 1500 BC. This is according to the Central Asian theory, and that theory was very much accepted before. Now, Aryans were pastoralists, bringing their distinct language, Sanskrit, and religious traditions. So, Aryans were basically people who were pastoralists. Pastoralist means who reared animals for their livelihood. Now, when they came to India, they brought with them distinct language, and also the language was Sanskrit and various other religious traditions. So all the traditions that we see today is assumed to be brought by the Aryans. Their migration is believed to have been gradual, spreading over several generations. Now, one fine day, they suddenly did not come into India. Their migration was gradual. Gradual means a group came first, and after that, another group came, after that, another group, and so on. So, their migration was very much gradual, and generation wise, they came to this part of the world. Key sources about Aryan origins include the Vedic text and later cultural influences. So, how do we know that they came from outside? We know about them from the sources like Vedic text and also other cultural influences. Now, here is a drawback of the ICSE board. In ICSE board, we have not updated the syllabus, and so we are discussing the fact that Aryans came from outside. But nowadays, there have been many more researchers in history, especially for the past 20 or 30 years. Many new researchers have come out, many new scientific tests have come out, and all these theories suggest that Aryans did not come from anywhere else. They were the original people of India, and we are all descendants of those same people. This was a theory created by the Europeans in order to create a division between North and South India so that they could practice the policy of divide and rule. However, unfortunately, ICSE board has not updated the syllabus, and that is why we are still studying that the Aryans originated in Central Asia and they migrated to India. It is actually not the truth, and that has been proved in later researches. So let's proceed. Vedic period. Now, what is the Vedic period and what was its significance? Now, the Vedic period is divided into two phases. There are two parts of the Vedic period. The early Vedic age spans from 1500 BC to 1000 BC. Now, early Vedic age is characterized into several divisions like the time when pastoralists were prevalent, the time when cattle rearing was prevalent, the time when the society was tribal. All those things have been categorized into early Vedic age, which spanned from 1500 to 1000 BC. Next, we have the later Vedic age, which is the recent age, and it spanned from 1000 to 500 BC. The early Vedic age is marked by a simple pastoral life centered around the Sapta Sindhu region. So, early Vedic age happened in the region of Sapta Sindhu. This means that the Indus Valley civilization, along with the areas of river Saraswati, which does not exist today, and river Ganga. So all these regions together make the Sapta Sindhu region. It can be considered to be in the northwestern part of the Indian subcontinent. So that is the place of occupation for the early Vedic age. Later Vedic age saw expansion into the Ganga Yamuna Doab with more complex societal structures. So later Vedic age the people shifted to the Ganga Yamuna Doab, and that means the area between the rivers of Ganga and Yamuna. We know that Ganga and Yamuna mixes together in the place of Prayagraj in Uttar Pradesh. Before that, there were two separate rivers. Now, the area between the two separate rivers is very fertile and very good for agriculture. So, that is the place where mainly the later Vedic people stayed. So, early Vedic people were there in the Sapta Sindhu region, whereas the later Vedic age people dominated the areas of Ganga Yamuna Doab because later Vedic people were agriculturalists, unlike the early Vedic people who were mainly pastoralists. The period is primarily known through religious texts, especially the Rig Veda. So, this period is significant because of the religious text, especially the Rig Veda, which is first of the four Vedas. So, what we have learned here, we have learned that the Vedic period is roughly of 1000 years, and it has been divided into two phases, that is the early Vedic age and the later Vedic age. The early Vedic age was pastoral in culture, and economy, and they centered around the region of Sapta Sindhu. The later Vedic age, however, was a bit more advanced, and they centered around the region of Ganga Yamuna Doab, which is the land between Ganga and Yamuna, and they were primarily agriculturalists. This period is known through many religious texts, especially the Rig Veda. Moving on, we will discuss about the main Vedas. Vedas are the primary religious texts of the Aryans, consisting of four main collections. So, Vedas are primary religious texts of the Aryans. That means they are the root of the Hindu culture as we know today. And there are mainly four main collections of Vedas. Rig Veda. It is the oldest text and probably the oldest text in the world, and it consists of hymns dedicated to gods. Hymns means sloks. So this Rig Veda is the oldest text, and it contains many hymns dedicated to the gods. Shamved, the collection of chants and melodies used in sacrifices. So, sacrificial rituals, which is also in Indian termed called Bali. So, these sacrificial rituals are explained in the Shamved. Sacrifices means giving something to the higher power or giving something to the god, sacrificing something to the god in order to get their blessings. So that was the motive of sacrifice. And Sham Ved especially deals with sacrificial rituals, and it also contains chants and melodies which were used during the sacrifices. Yajurved, instructions for rituals and sacrificial ceremonies. So, Yajurved mainly contains the details about what kind of protocols are to be followed for maintaining the sacrificial rituals, for doing the rituals, and what kind of ceremonies are done in order to do the sacrifices. So, all those things are there in the Yajurved. Atharvaved. Atharvaved is the last part of the Veda. Even some people, some highly accomplished religious people, do not consider it as a part of Veda because it contains spells, charms, and philosophical ideas. So, all the things about magics and everything that you hear is mainly from the Atharvaved, and Atharvaved contains the spell, charms, and other philosophical ideas. So, this is the characteristic feature of Atharvaved, and it is sometimes not considered to be a part of the Vedas. Vedas were originally passed down through generations and later compiled in Sanskrit. So, these Vedas were orally passed down through generations. Orally passed down means no people wrote these Vedas. They were passed down by hearing from the elders. So, people remembered the Vedas by hearing about them from their elders. So, generation wise, they were passed down and later on they were compiled in Sanskrit. The Rig Veda is particularly crucial for understanding early Vedic life, beliefs, and social structure. So, Rig Veda is a text that is primarily focused on the early Vedic life and culture, and we also get to know about the beliefs of people during the time of early Vedic life from the Rig Veda, and also we know about the social structure of the society at that point of time. Now, along with the Vedas, there are many other Vedic literatures also. So, we will discuss about them. Apart from the Vedas, other important Vedic texts include Brahmanas. Brahmanas are prose texts explaining the rituals and sacrifices. So, Brahmanas are Vedas, are parts of Vedas which explain the Vedas in a more practical manner. So those are prose text. As we know that Veds contain hymns, and those hymns are actually explained in the prose text of the Brahmanas, and they explain the rituals and sacrifices which are practiced in the Vedas. Aryanakas. Aryanakas are philosophical reflections, also known as forest treatises. So these were written in forest, and that is why the name Aranyakas come from. So Aranyakas are philosophical reflections, and they mainly explain about man's connection with nature. Hence, they are also called forest treatises. Upanishads, philosophical discussions on concepts like Brahman and Atman, laying foundations for Hindu philosophy. So, Upanishads are basically philosophical discussions on concepts like Brahman and Atman. Atman means soul, and Brahman means the eternal being. So, how does the soul which is there in human communicate with eternal being or the god? So these kinds of discussions are there in the Upanishads, and they lay the foundations for Hindu philosophy. The Hindu philosophy is especially the explanation of how the Brahman and Atman are related to each other. Epics like Ramayana and Mahabharata, which are composed later, also reflect Vedic traditions and values. So, in other words, in order to understand what is the motive behind other Vedic literature, we will go through an example. Suppose it is written that lying is bad, a moral is given, a slok or a hymn is given that lying is a bad habit. So it is difficult for the people to understand that lying is a bad habit. Hence, later on, people will make up a story like there was a person who used to tell the truth, then one day suddenly he lied because of some greed or something, and he faced a very bad consequence. So through the story we are explaining the motive, that is lying is bad for your lying is a bad habit. So like that, whatever sloks or whatever hymns are given in the Vedas have been explained with the help of stories and proses in other texts like the Brahmanas, Aranyakas, Upanishads, and Ramayana Mahabharata. So these are basically explanations of the Vedas in a more practical manner. Now, what are the specific characteristics of the early Vedic period? This chapter is mainly about the early Vedic period. So now we are coming to the main topic of this chapter. Also known as the Rig Vedic period, centered around the lifestyle and beliefs of the Aryans during 1500 to 1000 BC. So this is also called the Rig Vedic period because it is the time when the first Ved or the Rig Ved was composed, and it has been composed not only by one single person, it has been composed generation wise with numerous additions and addition of the text, and it was passed down orally generation wise. People remembered Rig Veda just by memorizing what they have heard from their elders. So this period, we since it was the time of composition of Rig Veda, that is why it is also called the Rig Vedic period, and it's centered around the lifestyle and beliefs of the Indian people, and the date of this period was 1500 to 1000 BC, roughly 500 years. Sapta Sindhu region, or the land of seven rivers, was the focal area of the Aryan civilization. Now, why is it called Sapta Sindhu? It is called Sapta Sindhu because of the five tributaries of Indus, the Indus itself, and the river of Saraswati, which does not exist anymore. So together there are about 7 rivers. So this Sapta Sindhu region was the focal area of the Aryan settlement during the early Vedic period, and Sapta Sindhu literally means land of 7 rivers. Rig Ved is primarily the primary source of information about this period. So, what did the people during this period worship? How did they lead their lives? What were the main food? What were the main dresses? Everything can be known from the Rig Ved. Hence, Rig Ved is the primary source of information about this period. Society was largely pastoral with limited agricultural activities. So, the society of the early Vedic period was mainly pastoral. Pastoral means people used to lead their livelihood with the help of rearing animals, animals like cattle, goats, sheep, etc. And animals were domesticated, and those animal products were mainly used for their own livelihood. So, this was the culture of early Vedic period. Early settlements. Who were the early settlers of the region and how did they settle? What kind of construction activities they did? Early Aryan settlements were located in the Sapta Sindhu region. So all the early Aryan settlements were in the Sapta Sindhu region. Now what is Sapta Sindhu region? It is basically the place where the Indus along with its 5 tributaries and the Saraswati River flowed. So this early Aryan settlement was in the Sapta Sindhu region. This included rivers like Saraswati, Sindhu, Gomati, Krumu and Kuha. So there were many other rivers along with Saraswati and Sindhu. They were Gomati, Krumu and Kubha. They were all directly or indirectly parts or tributaries of some bigger rivers. So other rivers in the Sapta Sindhu region were Gomati, Krumu and Kubha. Aryans practiced a semi nomadic lifestyle relying on cattle limited farming. So their lifestyle was semi nomadic. Semi nomadic means for about 6 months or 7 months they used to live in one place and then they used to leave the settlement there and go to someplace else in order to settle. So thus it was a semi nomadic lifestyle. Nomadic lifestyle means not staying in one place. Settled lifestyle means staying in one place, building proper houses and staying in one place. However, semi nomadic lifestyle means staying in a single place for a brief amount of time, and when the resources of those places were to be exhausted, they used to move to some other place. Settlements were loosely organized based on familial and tribal units. So, all the settlements here were very much loosely organized, means they did not have any kind of governance or kingship at that point of time, and most of the relationship between people was based on familial, means they belong to a single family. So most of the relationship was on familial ties and they were tribal in structure, means a group of people following similar culture used to live together. So that was the tribal culture, and during the early settlements of the early Vedic period, the settlements were organized on the basis of family bonding and tribal bonding. Family life. How was the family life of the Rig Vedic people or the early Vedic people? Family was the fundamental social unit in the Aryan society. So, the Aryan society was basically organized on the basis of family. Patriarchal structure with the eldest male as the grihapati or the head of the family. So the head of the family was the eldest male, hence it was considered to be a patriarchal structure. And Grihapati, or the head or the eldest male of the family, was called the Grihapati. Large joint families live together under one roof. Now, this is one of the cultures which has been continued to a large extent in the modern age also, where large joint families, all the brothers along with their family members and their sons and daughters also live together under one roof. So this was the structure of joint families, and it was very much prevalent in the early Vedic times. Vedic prayers emphasized loyalty and bravery, supporting the patriarchal structures. So, there were Vedic prayers dedicated to loyalty and bravery, and, and that supported the patriarchal structure of the society. Position of women. Now, as I have said before, that there was a patriarchal structure. That does not mean position of women was very bad in the society of the early Vedic people. No, it was not at all the truth. So how was the position of women? Women held a respectable position in the society and enjoyed several rights. So there were many rights reserved for the women in the society, and they had huge respect. Educated and treated equally to men. Women were given proper scope for education, and in the field of academics or education, they were treated totally equal to the men. It was not considered that women were less meritorious. That was not the system during the early Vedic age. Academically, in the manner of education, women were given equal opportunities and they were treated equal as the men. They participated in religious ceremonies, including sacrifices. In religious ceremonies, also, there were almost equal participation of women. So, they participated in religious ceremonies, including the ceremonies of sacrificial rituals. Everything had women in it. Some women were scholars and composed hymns. So, some women were very much accomplished in their education and they were granted the status of great scholars, and they also sometimes composed hymns of religious text, which was the greatest accomplishments for the educated people in those times. And scholars like Gargi and Maitreyi has been described in the Vedas for their academic accomplishments. They were allowed to choose husbands in Swayamvara ceremonies. Now, Swayamvara ceremonies was a ritual where a woman was presented with various options of a life partner, and the woman had freedom to choose the most suitable partner for them. So, that was the Swayamvar ceremony. Women were not forcefully married to anyone, they were given options and they used to choose their husbands. So there is a false narrative in the modern world that in the older ages women were not treated equal to the men, and they were mistreated, and they were never considered equal to the men. This is a narrative which has been spread in the modern society, but in the early Vedic age it was not the case. Academically and in every kind of scholarly activities, women were treated very much equal to the men. Even they were allowed to choose their own husbands. Actively participated in philosophical discussions. So, women actively participated in the philosophical discussions of the society. Thus, we know that women held a respectable position in the society of the early Vedic times. How was the marriage ceremony? What was the basis of marriage, and how were the marriages arranged in the Rig Vedic society? Monogamy was prevalent with marriages arranged by families. So there was monogamy. Monogamy means a man or a woman will have a single partner. Single marriage. At a time, they could be married to only one person. So monogamy was prevalent and marriage was basically arranged by the families. However, options were given to women regarding what kind of husbands they want, and they could choose their husband from the options available. Typical marriage age for girls was around 16 to 17 years. So even though this is less than 18, but still it can be considered to be an advanced concept, because child marriage was not actually prevalent in the early Vedic times. So typical marriage for girls was around 16 to 70, when a girl becomes woman, when they progress to adulthood. That was the time for marriage for the girls. Widows had the right to remarry. If because of some reason the husband of a woman died, then that woman was considered to be a widow, and widows always had the right to marry again in the early Vedic times. So widows had the right to remarry. This was very advanced concept considering the time period of 1500 to 1000 BC. Child marriage was not common during the early Vedic period. As I have said, child marriage was actually non existent in the early Vedic period. So, if someone tells you that women did not have any respect uh, in the society during the early Vedic times, or there used to be child marriage in the early Vedic times, they are wrong. That was much later, but in the early Vedic times, women were given respect. They were academically considered equal to the men, and also they had the right to choose their own husbands. Even widows could remarry in the early Vedic period, and child marriage was not at all accepted. Dress and food. How did the people of the early Vedic times decorate themselves with different kinds of dresses and ornaments, and what kind of food they used to eat? Clothing consisted of two main garments. There were two main garments for dressing. What were they? Antariya. Antariya means the lower garment wrapped around the waist. So, from the waist up until the feet was covered with a special type of garment called Antariya. Uttariya basically meant the upper garment draped over the shoulders. So the garment which is above the waist, that garment was called uttariya, and upper garment draped over the shoulders. Jewelry, what kind of ornaments they used to have? Jewelry was made of gold and precious stones, was common among both men and women. So gold jewelry and stone jewelry was very much common both among men and women. So, men and women both used to decorate themselves with different kinds of gold and stone jewelries. Diet included barley, milk, meat, fruits, and vegetables. So, what kind of diet they used to have? They used to have barley, milk, meat, fruits, and vegetables. Mainly the products which can be obtained from hunting and gathering, because the economy not was not by the agriculturalists at that point of time. People were pastoralists, so animal and forest products were the main things for consumption. Soma and Sura were popular intoxicating drinks consumed occasionally. So, occasionally they used to have intoxicating drinks like Soma and Sura. So, that was all about the dress and food of the early Vedic people. So in this video, we have discussed about the origins of the Aryans, even though if from the basis of a very outdated and backdated ICSE syllabus. However, we have proceeded into discussions about the Vedic period. After that, We have learned about the main Vedas. We have also learned about the other Vedic literature. Then we have gone into how the early Vedic period was, who were the early settlers, and in what kind of areas they settled. After that, we have discussed about family life, position of women, what was the main system of marriage, and also what kind of dress and food the early Vedic people wore. So that was all about for today, and in our next video we are going to go deep into the early Vedic economy and society. So thank you for your love and support, and if you have any doubts, please post it in comments.